Okay, we're continuing through Luke. We're now on Luke 14, and we're continuing to look at what Jesus is saying. And it's an interesting build-up. It seems to, over the last few chapters, it's felt really heavy. It's felt really quite tough and hard, and it gets harder and tougher. I believe that the hinge of the book, or maybe it's the hinge of the book, I believe, is Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son. And I was thinking, if we look at Matthew's gospel for a second, as a sort of contrast, what Matthew does is has a big build-up with the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus talks about lust, about divorce, about being angry. And the point at the end of it, you must feel like you're absolutely smashed, because it's just one thing after another of standards that we humans can't keep. All of us have looked inappropriately at people. All of us have lost our rag in a bad way. All of us have messed up in some way or another. And Luke, in many ways, is doing the same thing, but doing it rather more subtly. You know, all of us will probably realize that we haven't, if we've had more than one shirt and we haven't given the spare one to the poor. Most of us will know that we haven't always, sort of trusted God with our futures. Most of us know that we, haven't been as compassionate as we could have done. There's time and again, Luke is sort of tweaking us to make us realize that actually our lives aren't sorted, that we are racked with worry, we have messed up, we're not right, actually. And again, it comes to the point where we need to realize that we need a savior, we need a rescuer, we need somebody to come and say, actually, I know that I am not all that I should, could, or want to be. I used to sometimes make a joke of I have low standards that I fail to attain, which actually I think is true for the for the human condition, that we all have messed up. We have all fallen short. We have all screwed up. Everyone's got a skeleton or two in their cupboard. And I think that as we move through the various bits of the of Luke, we get more into this feeling. We move into the Jesus at a Pharisee's house, and again he's talking about people just getting it wrong, people not having the right idea. The idea again of the Sabbath being a time when people are able to heal. Again, this is a similar story. It's happened about 3 times now, where Jesus has healed somebody on the Sabbath and got into trouble for it. And then he moves on to about our hearts, where he sees somebody at a wedding feast picking places of honor, and he says, when someone invites you to a wedding feast, don't take the place of honor. For if a person more distinguished than you arrives, you're going to have to move down. Humiliated, you'll have to take a lower place and then be invited to go further up. That whole idea about an honor and shame society is the one that Luke is writing to. And it says this: for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who will humble themselves will be exalted. This is a continued refrain in lots of scriptures, actually, but this is a refrain here. And again, we see that all the way through Luke. So you see Mary says that in not these exact words, but says that in the Magnificat, in a hymn of praise. Again, it's that idea about humbleness and exaltedness. And he says, and then Jesus says this: when you hold a lunch or dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors, because they'll invite you back and you'll be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, although they cannot repay you, but you will be repaid on the resurrection. The resurrection of the righteous is an interesting phrase, actually, because I think by this point we realize that we're not righteous. Actually, all of us have messed up, and the only righteous one is Jesus, and we need his help. And almost there's that idea of actually being invited to a banquet that we don't deserve, and we can't afford to pay back. Actually, is at the heart of what the gospel is about. It's an unearned gift that we could never repay. And then we get the story of the great banquet, which is an interesting picture of Luke's probably his central theme of those who should recognize Jesus, who should turn to him, who should be living in obedience and harmony with God, aren't. And those who would consider themselves written off are those who are the ones who Jesus is saying God accepts you and welcomes you. It's that paradox that's there. There's the king invites people to come to a party, and then there's someone says, I've just got married, I've bought 5 yoke of oxen, or what's the other one we've got in there? I've just bought a field. Rubbish excuses. But you know what? How often do we hear people make excuses of missing out on God? Oh, I'm not the religious type. I'm too busy. I can't do a Sunday morning, or whatever it is. Actually, Jesus is doing the picture of saying, you're invited to a banquet, an opportunity of a lifetime, and you're missing it for a really poor excuse. He's almost playing with the people, saying, you're missing out on this for that excuse. I just got married. I'll bring your wife. I bought a field. It'll be there tomorrow. I need to try out some oxen. Well, they've got a fair life expectancy. I'm sure you can cope 24 hours. Then the servant reported back to the master, and he said, go quickly into the streets, to the alleys of the town, and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame. The servant said, what you've ordered has been done, but there is still room. Then the master said, go to the roads, the country lanes, and compel them to come in. So my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who are invited will taste my banquet. Some people say this is a picture of Jews and Gentiles, but I think it's bigger than that. I think it is the religious and the irreligious, the people who think they're sorted, the smug, the self-righteous, and those who know they need a saviour. Those who I'm all right, actually, I'm a good person type people. The people who think I'm okay, it's everybody else who needs the help. Jesus is saying, actually, come to a banquet. It almost echoes that call of Isaiah. Come to the banquet with come, eat without cost. Have bread that will satisfy and wine that will quench your thirst. And Jesus ends this chapter with a real challenge. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus is actually calling us to hate, parents and kids and wives and husbands and siblings. But it's saying that compared to Jesus, every other relationship comes second. Actually, I believe that when we put Jesus first, actually it makes all other relationships work in a different way. But saying actually we need to honor Jesus above every other relationship. And actually following Jesus is a call to carry our cross and be his disciples. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. When you first sit down, estimate the cost to see if they have enough money to complete it. Because if you lay the foundations, don't finish it, everyone will ridicule and say, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish it. Jesus is saying, if you want to be my disciple, weigh it up carefully. Take it seriously. Too often, I think we're very keen at getting people to pray a prayer or come forward, but too rarely do we say this decision is the most important decision you'll ever make. It will change everything. It'll change everything. It is costly. It is difficult. Yes, it's worth it. Yes, I want to do it. But too often, I think we make it too easy to say yes to Jesus. But we do not make it clear what it means to truly count the cost. Or suppose a king is about to go to war with another king. When he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose one coming with 20,000. If he's not, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and offer terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. It's almost that picture again of the rich the rich ruler who Jesus sends away and says, go sell all you have and give your money to the poor. What is it we're holding back from God? There's a phrase that I remember hearing once which said, if Jesus is not Lord of all, is he Lord at all? If Jesus is not Lord of all, is he Lord at all? It's a challenge, isn't it, that the Lordship of Jesus needs to extend to every part of our lives. It's hard, it's tough, it's challenging. It's not always easy. But actually, Jesus requires us to give our all. It's an all-in call. But too often we make it a token gesture response. Jesus is saying, I want you, I want all of you, not just a bit of you. And then this passage ends with this line, salt is good. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's neither fit for the soil nor the manure pile. It is to be thrown out. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Actually, it's saying that if you're going to be a Christian, we cannot blend in and be exactly the same as the world. When we say yes to Jesus, we are choosing, to use the baptism imagery, to say I'm dead to my old way of life and I'm alive to following Jesus, to a new way of life, to living our life God's way. The problem is what we want to do is be low-calorie salt, is to be saltless, to be the same as the world, to merge and to blend in and be exactly the same. Jesus is saying, you can't be a Christian that's a chameleon. You're called to be different. You're called to be salt and light. If you lose your saltiness, you become the same as everybody else. Have you really counted the cost? Or are you trying to have a foot in both camps? It's a challenge as we come into what I think is the hinge of this verse, to know that all of us have messed up. All of us are not as salty as we should. All of us, need to think carefully about saying yes to God and the cost that it involves. But we also know that we have fallen way, way short of God's holy and perfect standards. And as we think that we are, as we come into this next passage, we are people in massive need of grace, in massive need of a saviour, in massive need of rescue, in massive need of God himself to come and help us, rescue us, forgive us, restore us, and cleanse us. And that is what the next chapter, I believe the hinge of Luke, is all about.